Welcome to Work Life Cyber. Thank you for stopping by. Today we are going to continue on our series for Comptia Security Plus 701. We are going to discuss today vulnerable software vectors. Remember, in our previous videos, we talked about attack surface and threat vectors. Today we are going to continue in the same mindset to talk about vulnerable software vectors. What is a vulnerable software? A vulnerable software is just a weakness that can be triggered accidentally or intentionally to cause a security breach. Remember, these things are not always accidental. People are actually intentionally trying to hack into system, trying to figure out to exploit vulnerabilities. So as vulnerable software, just think about vulnerable as, a weakness, being open, being exploitable, you see. So a vulnerable software is a weakness that can be triggered accidentally or intentionally exploited to cause a security breach. A vulnerable software has a flaw in the code that can actually aid to circumvent any access control. So whatever control you have for access, maybe you have password, MFA, if the software itself is vulnerable, if it has a flaw in the code, in its code, hackers or threat actors or even intentional workers, not just black hats, just a white hat, or even any worker in a company can circumvent these access controls or even stop it in its process. They can even mess up with the process that if the software is supposed to do A, B, and C, because it has a weakness or a flaw in the code, anybody can tamper with this flaw. You get it? So that's a vulnerable software. Now that we are talking, this topic is going to be about vulnerable software vector. Remember, we talked about vectors to be paths, right? So this is a vulnerable software path, but the topic is a vulnerable software vector. Typically, vulnerabilities can be exploited in certain specific circumstances, right? And are usually fixed or patched by the vendors. So that's also a good idea. That's why when you have your phones for your personal lives, when you have your phones, your computers, all types of computers, your laptops, your desktops, your kids' tablets, all of these, you should regularly check for updates. These updates are also patches, right? They fix bugs and they do little fixes, and they also bring new security policies that are good for your machines. So always, if you don't know how to check for updates on your computers, and I mean all sorts of computers, your phone, your smartwatches, everything. You check how to update them and regularly update them. And all the times that you get notification to update your phones, go ahead and update it. You know how most phones will let you schedule for in the middle of the night, because some of these updates can go up to an hour. I understand some of you don't have the luxury to stop your phones for an hour. That's also not a good thing if you can't stop your phone for an hour. But anyway, I'm not judging, I only listen. So schedule for the middle of the night when you don't need your phone and let these updates go through. It's good for you. It's maybe sometimes a breach may happen on the vendor side, and so they put in they tighten their security measures, and then they push it out in the form of updates. So go ahead and do the updates. It's also a very good idea to reboot your phones, your tablets, and things every once a while. I have put it in your mind that maybe you do it once a week or once a month. Just by all means do it. Some of you never reboot your computers or your phones or your smartwatches. It's always a good idea to do these things. All right. So patches are good. And vendors do well. They hire very experts to continue checking their software and trying to push out updates and push out versions and push out security policies. But you see, there are so many diverse softwares and so many. We are living in a computerized age where everything is a software. And because of the complexity of all these push outs, all these versions, updates, all these patches, there is absolutely, no matter how hard these vendors are trying, Apple is trying its best, Samsung is trying its best, your LG, all these smart computers are doing their best to push out updates and patches, but there is almost no software that is without a vulnerability, right? So even though they're on top of it, you just can't fix all vulnerabilities, like put it to zero, but they always bring it to an acceptable level where they are always patching, where they are always checking for updates, where they are always creating new policies. All right. So no software is without vulnerabilities, but there are experts who are working tirelessly to overcome these vulnerabilities and to bring it to an acceptable level. Still on the topic of vulnerable software, let's discuss unsupported software. If you are in charge of risk assessment, or if you've had any experience assessing any application, you know one of the question is, any of the softwares, do any of the softwares have unsupported? Do any of the devices have unsupported software? Right? Good. And what an unsupported software is any software that the vendor has stopped developing patches or updates for the software. So the vendor decides, okay, this could be, maybe the vendor created a new or whole another upgrade, and this is very common with Apple products. Yes, let me rant a little bit. They make their products to last, but down the road, when you call them, maybe something major happens and you call them, they will tell you, we no longer support this. It's so old. It's legacy. Find a vendor on the roadside. No, I don't want to do that. I want to come to you, the creator of the product, and I want you to be able to support me. So now that rant is over, unsupported software is a software that the vendor no longer supports. The vendor doesn't push out patches. The vendor doesn't bring new versions. The vendor doesn't push out any security softwares. So when you call the vendor and you say, hey, we haven't been patched in a month, what's going on? They are going to point blank tell you, we don't do it anymore. So two things that you can do to fix this. If your company, your developers can actually patch it themselves using their own codes, or if they can figure out how to patch it themselves, because the vendor has stopped patching it. So it's very, very vulnerable. Any new vulnerabilities are there to stay. Even old vulnerabilities are not being patched. They are not being updated. No mitigation at all. So that's a dangerous software if it's no longer supported by the vendor. And so you either do it yourself or you negotiate with the vendor to get the upgraded version. Look, there are so many breaches, so many identity thieves, and so many, all of these bad actors out there. You need to protect yourself. Keep current. Keep all your smart devices current. So don't be using unsupported softwares over there, all right? As for companies, one way that they use to kind of manage unsupported devices, unsupported apps or softwares, is that they isolate it from everything else. You know, they put in codes to kind of put it in a bubble. That's the right word. They put it in a bubble that if it is exploited, the threat actor will not have any other access. They have their own codes that they put in place, that if I am a bad actor and I happen to hack into a software that is unsupported, if they've done their due diligence, it will be in a bubble that I will not be able to use that vector, that software to access any other software or workstation or even the network. Nothing. So that's what companies are doing. If they must, maybe the software is unsupported, but they are only using it for legacy purposes. Maybe they are just they use it for informational purposes, so they need it. They are not actually using it, so they need it, and so they don't also want to do another version, or the vendor is no longer exists, but they are just using the app. So what they would do, what the developers would do, the software developers or the cybersecurity team will do, is that they will put these apps in a bubble and secure it in a way that when a threat actor gets into the system or through the app, gets into the app, they will not be able to access anything else. They will not be able to access your personal information if you are on work, and they will not be able to access any of our network systems. Still on software, vulnerable softwares, let's talk about scanning. There's agent and agentless scanning. Agent is when the software, the scanning software is installed on the host where they're going to do the scanning. Is installed on it, and then they scan to check any vulnerabilities, and then do the necessary patches and the necessary mitigations that come with it. Agentless is when they don't even need to install. They can scan without installing the software, the scanning software on the host. So this is pretty straightforward. Agent is being installed on the app before scanning it. They install the scanning app, and sometimes threat actors use this a lot, because back in the day, you will be there and then you will see boom, some pop-up will come on your phone or your tablet or that says this and this vulnerabilities, you are under threat. We saw this threat, some scary thing. Then they will say scan right now. The moment you click the scan, boom, 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 they install their stuff, and then they have access to your network and your information. Now people are wiser, and software developers are also wiser. I tell you, the threat actors are smart, but we, the good ones, are becoming smarter and smarter too. And that's what you and I come in, right? Our entire life is studying what could go wrong and trying to be ahead of the threat actors. So agent is being installed on your apps or your devices so that you can do constant scanning. And agentless is just going to go ahead and scan the stuff which big companies use, right? So agent versus agentless, the really is where the scanning app is being installed is what makes the difference. So if you go in the exam room and you see agent, just think of it as an agent standing right there and helping you, like with your taxes. Or agent means just picture it as a human being right there, meaning they've installed the physical thing, not the physical thing, like the app. And then agentless, look at it as agentless. There's nothing, it's invisible, so you don't see it. All right. I hope this has thrown some light on. We did vulnerable software vectors, and we did agent versus agentless, and we did unsupported softwares. So these can even help you in your personal life. Today's topic actually can help you in your personal life. Do those patches and updates on all your smart devices, your children's smart devices, and keep your devices up to date. Come by next time and let's continue studying. Good luck on your researches and your studying. I hope this has brought some understanding to the topics we treated. I will see you in the next video.